Does it sound? I think so. You sound like a male.
Do I really?
Yeah.
Gigi?
I think you talk it out with me. We'll be able to hear you. There's a good echo. You guys can all hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, well, use no mic. If everybody can just stand for a second and join me in a pledge of allegiance to our glorious flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. My name is Marie Galati, and I'm the mayor of Hopatcong. I want to welcome all of you tonight to our public water meeting and to express my gratitude for your presence. Before we begin, I would like to introduce our members of the council that are here. We have Councilwoman Jennifer Johnson and Councilwoman Rachel Rodriguez. We also have Danielle from the municipal building behind the scenes doing our camera for those who need us to be live streamed. The dedication from your mayor and council and commitment to our community play a significant role in the progress that we all make together, especially with our water. This meeting is particularly important to me as I have firsthand experience with the challenges of PFAS and its contamination and what it does to my family. Before I became mayor, my own well was testing positive for PFAS, and I went through the process of applying for assistance through the New Jersey Spill Fund. And as a result, my home was retrofitted with a carbon filtration system to remove the contamination from my private well. Through this journey, I've had the privilege of helping over 300 residents whose private wells have also tested positive for PFAS. Since taking office, I have been planning this meeting to ensure that the public had access to all of the crucial information we have about the water issues facing Hopatcong Borough. Transparency is a top priority, and I want you to know that every piece of information that we have as the Borough of Hopatcong is available to you. This issue is very close to my heart. Many of you know recently that we've had our private wells, several of them that have gone dry because of the issue with no rain for more than 30 days. To assist those impacted, we've left a water buffalo at Firehouse number 3 on the apron. This is non-potable water. You cannot drink it, but you can use it to flush toilets, etc. We are looking into getting a second water buffalo in another location in town because we were informed yesterday that there is also extremely low water pressure in another area for private wells. Water is an incredibly precious commodity. It's essential to all aspects of our daily lives. Everyone drinks the water and everyone flushes their toilet. These are universal needs that connect all of us. Tonight, we are fortunate to have our borough engineer, John Rushke from Mott MacDonald, who will present an informative PowerPoint that covers key information and updates. At the conclusion of this presentation, we will open the floor for questions. While some questions may be specific to individual properties and might not be answerable tonight, I assure you that we will follow up and those answers will be given to you as soon as possible. Thank you once again for taking the time to be here tonight. I know how busy everyone's schedules can be. Your participation is greatly appreciated. For those who could not join us in person, this meeting is being live streamed and will be available for viewing futuristically on our Facebook and our website. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask our engineer, John Rushke, to take over for the PowerPoint.
All right, thank you, Mayor, and thanks everyone for coming out. I'm sure a lot of frustrations out there. Every quarter, you're getting another notice that the municipal water system's out of compliance and what's going on. So we're hopeful that, as we go through this PowerPoint, we're going to explain, where we are with the system and where we're going forward. So just give a general overview. So what I'm going to touch on is first. Where am I? I'm going to touch on why my PowerPoint's not working. Okay. I'm going to just go with what is PFAS. I'm going to go over the drinking water regulations, go over the typical treatment processes associated with PFAS, and then I'm just going to touch on the PFAS in private wells that it's a serious situation in town. PFAS is not new. PFAS is not new. It's been in the news, for number of. Oh, there's just article after article that you have with on PFAS. It's just you're constantly. God bless you. You're constantly seeing it in the news. And even in entertainment, there's been actually movies over, the whole PFAS situation. And so there's been 2 films and it even comes out, on late night shows. So, PFAS has been in the news for a very long time. Now, I hated organic chemistry. Okay, thank you. So like I was saying, when I was in college, I hated organic chemistry. So I'm not going to explain, the actual breakdown of PFAS. But PFAS is basically, it's a compound primarily of carbon and fluorine, and it's a very strong bond. And so that's why they call it the forever chemical, is because it does not break down very easily. It's a very strong bond. And so where is PFAS? PFAS it was manufactured by several manufacturers, DuPont, 3M, and others worldwide, but it's in a lot of products that we have. You'll have it in nonstick pans and cosmetics, paints. There's a number of products that this was manufactured and it was introduced into the marketplace. One of the quick questions that people ask me, well, where did the PFAS come in a pack-on? Where did it come to? How did it get into our drinking water? And frankly, we don't know. PFAS has been around for many years. It could have been introduced through industrial discharges into streams, into water bodies. It can be introduced into sanitary landfills. As it gets into our wastewater, it gets into the wastewater treatment plants. Then it just gets discharged into a stream again, or the biosolids gets deposited. So PFAS has just been in our system for a long period of time, and it just has been worked into the environment. I've actually saw an article that PFAS was actually detected in a polar bear, in the blood of a polar bear in the North Pole. That's how vast that the PFAS has been around the world. So PFAS, there is a concern with it. There is potential health threats associated with it. There's another one, number of listed on the slide. So it's a real concern that regarding, having PFAS in the water and having the mode of need to remove it. So just going over the drinking water regulations, there's a bit of a history regarding, the progression of PFAS. PFAS was originally, really phased out by 3M and other chemical companies back in 2002 is where they started to transition to stop the manufacturing process. But for many years, from the 50s, it was just a long period that they were manufacturing this and getting into the environment. There's the EPA. There was a period where EPA was studying it, and they created some short-term health advisory levels. Very high levels when we get in, as we discuss this further, of 400 to 200 nanograms per liter. As the time progressed, the EPA actually came out with a official lifetime health advisory standard of 70. So that came out in 2016. And so when that level, that's when the regulation started. That's when people really started to focus on PFAS. What are the levels that we have in your well system? Are you exceeding that 70? So APACON actually initiated sampling for PFAS very early in the process. We weren't even required by the state to actually sample it, but we initiated it sooner than we were mandated to start sampling for it. And our levels were well below 70. So we thought, okay, that we didn't really have a problem with PFAS. Eventually, the DEP, the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, they started to do their own independent health-based analysis, and they came out with a standards in 2020. And then ultimately, the EPA came out with a new standard in 2024. So New Jersey, they did their own independent study. They hired, did an analysis. They reviewed, various different health-based analysis based on animal toxicity, looking at different health effects, drinking water ingestion rates and such. So they went through this extensive analysis, and they actually developed standards that were actually more stringent than the 70 established by the EPA. So New Jersey standards were actually 13 and 14 and 13, so significantly lower than the 70 that was established. That once DEP identified that standard, that's when they started to require sampling, and that's when we started to realize that we have to do something to address our water in APACON. So around the time that New Jersey passed their standards, it was not something that every state that did. There was only several states that took the initiative, like New Jersey, and started to establish their own standards. And so, when New Jersey established theirs, there was other standards. California had a more restrictive standard. Michigan also, but some of the states actually adopted they didn't even do a study themselves, like Connecticut. They ended up just adopting the 70 and just adopted that as their state regulations. So there has been a progression of that. So right now, the EPA, they had an advisory standard of 70 that was in 2016, and just recently, 2024, they actually set a new standard of 4, and that's going to be set nationally. So all the state standards are no longer. You have to meet the federal requirements. So the new standard that you need to meet now is 4. So just to put things in perspective regarding the levels that we're finding in our wells ourselves, you can see I listed both the active wells and the inactive wells. The active wells are wells that we run all the time, and that I'll describe the inactive wells. But the active wells, you can see that the levels, we really haven't gone above 40. So when we were sampling early, these are maximum levels that we had in our wells. So these are just kind of a perspective of what the levels are. But we were at the time we thought we were just slightly above the health standards for New Jersey, but when we apply this federals, we're substantially higher than those. So the active wells, we have PFAS. I'll go into removal later, but the inactive wells, we currently have some inactive wells because they require some more treatment process. Like, for example, the Bayview well, it's currently not operating because it has a high iron content, and we actually have treatment facilities in there. We have a 1 micron filtration system that takes the iron out, but it's very labor intensive. It requires a lot of labor, and so that's why we took that well offline. Same with the other wells. We had the Madison and the Crescent Hudson well that we took offline again with that filtration system. But we are going to start looking at, because we are our water system is, we're meeting our current demands, but, we want to make sure that if we get into situations like now with a heavy drought, we are starting to see some of our wells starting to come down. So we do have a bit of a concern. We did, initiate the one water restrictions for that short period of time. And unfortunately we had it was just a perfect storm where we had water main breaks. We had one of our major wells go down, and we had other issues that were happening. And it's just, like I said, a perfect storm, but those perfect storms happen. So we are going to work on getting those other wells back online. So just PFAS treatment, what treatment is out there. So PFAS, again, it's a forever chemical. The bonds that you have with on the compound itself, it's a very strong bond, and it's very difficult to break that bond for various streams. So you have to consider that when you're looking at the type of treatment that you can apply. So the fact that it's difficult to break those bonds up to degrade the chemical, usually most treatment processes, you're just absorbing it. You're absorbing it, or you're separating that PFAS out of the water in order to, treat it. And then after you get that out, you have to, send it for destruction. They incinerate it. And that's the means of the typical means of treatment that's associated with that. In our system, we did look at various, there's a number of systems out there that you can use to treat PFAS. Some of them are not very viable. Some of them have a, very feasible and a track record of use, and some are even experimental. So if you look at this graph, ultimately the area around here is really the area that that most water utility companies are using. Carbon is by far the most common that people are using to treat PFAS. Ion exchange is similar to the treatment process of it's a media that water is flowing through that captures the PFAS and retains it in the resin. And then you have reverse osmosis, which is a very expensive process, and not many people are using that process. And then ultimately, once you, like for the activated carbon and ion exchange, the medias just get saturated, and then ultimately you have to change the media in your filters, and then you send it out for incineration. So again, just talking about the different processes, if you drive around town, you saw the blue tanks, that's what we have. We have activated carbon, and that's what the process that we're using. You have two separate vessels, one being a lag, one being a lead, so that water is flowing through both of them. Ion exchange, very, very similar process. You're using a different resin. The resin tends to be very expensive, so that's one of the reasons why we didn't go that route. There's some advantages with ion exchange, is that the vessels don't have to be as large. But given, looking at the size of the units, we were able to put the carbon units at our well houses, and that's why we didn't go with carbon exchange. And reverse osmosis, again, it's available. It's a technology that's feasible, but it is a bit expensive, very expensive. So the activated carbon, if you were to look into our filters, it's the same. If you were to crack open a brewer filter or some type of water filter, it's the carbon, and that's what ultimately our water is flowing through that carbon. The PFAS is being absorbed. We test it to make sure that once it's spent, that we change it out, and then just a continuous cycle of having to change the media out. The carbon itself, there's a lot of different media that's out there. The fact that this is really a national problem, we're seeing more and more manufacturers of carbon refining their product to be more effective and other benefits. So it is a whole new industry regarding, activated carbon has always been something it's been utilized for a very long time for water treatment for other reasons. If you operated a surface water treatment plant, carbon is typically installed to eliminate odors. If you have volatile organic compounds in carbon is used for that. So carbon's been around for a while, but there's never been this demand that almost every water system in New Jersey is going to have some type of treatment. And carbon is probably the workhorse that most people are turning to because it's economical to install, and it's probably the most proven technology that's out there. So again, these filters are that we designed at the well houses. They're designed based on our flow rates. So we look at our flow rates that ultimately determines the size of the tanks that we have to have. We run the tanks in series. And so basically we run one tank and then we sample from the discharge of one tank and we discharge from the end of the second tank. When we collect the sample from the second tank, that's our compliance sample. That's what we're discharging into the water system. That's what we're reporting to the DEP to make sure that we are meeting those standards and eliminating it. The first sample that we take on the first tank, that's just an indicator. That's our safeguard. So we're actually, for the most part with when both of them are both new, we're getting non-detect on both of them for a long period of time. Ultimately, we start to see breakout on the first tank. So as soon as we start seeing breakout on the first tank, that's when we end up changing the carbon out. And we change the carbon out on the first tank. And then what we do, we have valving that we change it around. Now the second tank is the first tank and it just goes over. So we change that out. So that's how what we'll be doing. We haven't, the carbon actually lasts because our concentrations are so low. The carbon's lasting quite a bit. Our first unit that we installed was almost 2 years ago, and now we're just changing the carbon for the first time. So it does last quite a long time before we have to change it out. So this is an important slide where we are. Basically we have 7 wells that are those active wells that produce most of the water that we have in the water system. 4 of the wells are already have the treatment installed and it's being treated. So we have non-detect levels coming out of those 4 wells. We have the 3 remaining wells, which are Squire, Durbin, and well number 2. Those steel vessels have been installed. We're just waiting to install the carbon. Actually, the carbon for those remaining 3 wells were delivered today, and we're hoping over the next 2 weeks we can start those systems up. We got to transfer the carbon in. There's a whole process of getting that started. So by the end of the month, we should have all our wells on activated carbon, treating PFAS and providing non-detect levels into the water system. Unfortunately, the regulations are that we have to report a working average. The average is what we have to report to the DEP. So even though in December, when we sample, we're going to get 0 detect at these 3 wells, we have to average it with the 3 quarters where we had high concentrations. So unfortunately, you're going to get notices probably all through 2025 that we're exceeding the standard for PFAS. And the reason why we're exceeding it, not because we're putting elevated PFAS into the water system, it's because our running average, we have to ultimately test that water, get non-detect. Every time we get non-detect, we work the average goes lower, but it's not going to really get below 4 until we have 4 quarters sampled. Yeah, exactly. We will do that, but I'm just saying that people. Yes, yeah. We're in those notices. We'll inform everyone that all the wells are connected and that the system. But we can't stop sending those notices out, per the regulations, because we have to report it on a running average.
The 3 wells that are not treated currently, have they been discharging into our water system?
Yes, they have been, because all the wells, really, we've been recognized that PFAS has been discharged into our system since probably when the wells were first done in the 50s. It was always PFAS in the water. It was only till recent we detected that it's present. We were not able to just install all the PFAS at one time immediately, and the one thing that we did do is we've been using grant funds to do this, because there's grant funds with the state, with the feds, and we did receive funding to do this. So it was done in phases because of two different grant opportunities that we utilize. So, we were very, fiscally responsible, trying to, not have your quarterly bill go up substantially and pay for this equipment. We're probably investing well over $2 million to so far into the equipment. So the three wells, we had to keep them running. We had to keep all the wells running, otherwise you'd run out of water. So it's more of fire protection and just safety for having people. We couldn't just shut the water system down to do that.
The wells centralized, or are they distributed to different?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm glad you brought that up, because that was probably the number one question that people were asking me, is because we reported that, say, the River Styx well, it's non-detect, but the other wells are you still have elevated concentrations. The system works as the wells are not centrally located. They're located throughout the town, and so it is putting water into the distribution system at multiple locations, and it's all one system. Everyone's connected. So if we shut all the wells off except one, you could still have that well distribute water anywhere in the town. It would still go. So it's all one system. The system, we basically have wells that pump into pipes that are in the road and ultimately go into the house. And we have storage tanks that maintain the pressures that in the system. So basically, yeah, we can't, yeah. Even now, like if we were to say that, it's highly likely that the people in Elbow Point or Wildwood Shores, their water is already below, because the remaining wells that we have is more on the southern part of town versus the northern part of town. But we really can't represent to the people in Wildwood Shores that the water is not still, above the level, because the water is mixing. And so it's mixing in the system. And so until all the wells are connected, and the system, we flushed, eventually a month or two before the systems, works through, where there's fresh water coming into the system, into the tanks, is where the levels are going to be non-detect then at the home. Excuse me? Yeah, I'll touch on private wells in a minute. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So like I said, there's 4 wells that we still want to, that's offline, and we basically took those offline for the labor intensive. And so if we wanted to get those wells activated, then we can, but now we still, we want to wait until we get the GAC units installed on those wells before we activate them. So we can limp along with the wells that we have and just, get the system non-detect as fast as we could, with utilizing grant funding. But the remaining wells, we're going to apply for more grant money. Now that's going to be a third phase. And so we're trying to tap in. There's a lot of federal, like, again, this is affecting, nationwide. There's a lot of federal funds out there, and there's even state funds. And so we're going to, tap into more grant funds to get those remaining wells connected. So, and we do need to get those remaining wells only to reinforce the system. We don't want to have situations where we have to have water restrictions because we can't keep up with it. The tanks are getting dangerously low. We want to make sure the system can work through those peaks and those difficult times.
First of all, we are in the River Styx area, and this may be a very specific question. We have a whole house filter, and we did notice that once those wells came in, our filter remained pretty much pristine, clear. So we do know those things work. But in the third quarter of 2024 for River Styx, in the water report, I did notice that the numbers jump up a bit than in the last prior 2 quarters. Was that due to the maintenance of the charcoal filter?
It was, the water department, to be frank, there was a little learning curve with the water department. And at first they weren't running the system in series. They were just running the one water through one tank. And so, you know, that shouldn't have done that. We corrected that because that kind of alerted us. Right. But yeah, that's why we had a little, that's the only reason why that that was, because that was just a mistake that was made that was, you know, was immediately
No, I
corrected.
understand you can't turn off the water
Yeah.
for maintenance, but I was wondering when you said it's time to start changing things.
Yeah, and so, you know, we shouldn't have that, you know, because once we detected on the first vessel, we should, you know, it should take, if it takes 2 years to have to change something out, we have plenty of time. It only takes a few months for us to procure the additional carbon, change it out. So we may take a couple of months to change out the carbon, but we should be safe. The fact that we know
Yeah.
we've
But
learned that we have that much time to go before we have to change it out.
It does work. our filters.
Yeah. Yeah, well, carbon it's not taking out PFAS, it's taking out any other organic matter or anything that's in the system. So, you know, your water is being well filtered now. So there is other benefits associated with that. So just jumping to private wells, and I know that, you know, we've really been focusing on the municipal system, and but you know, we're pulling water. We have bedrock wells. We're pulling water out of the underlying aquifer, and so are a lot of residents that have private wells, and so they face the same problems that we're having with PFAS, and there are regulations that came out in 2021, where now when you sell a home, you have to test it. So so the regulations kind of caught up with the private wells too, where they have to treat PFAS, in fact, if they you know, have elevated levels. And so, you know, the homeowners are faced with that same issue, but there is opportunities for the homeowners to address the filters. You know, basically they have they have the same opportunities that we have regarding the granular activated carbon, ion exchange, or going with the reverse osmosis. A lot of what I see with the residents, they're actually going with the iron exchange because it requires a much smaller tank for the residents, and that's actually what the if you go through the spill fund, and I'll touch on in a minute, that's what the DEP likes to see. If they're gonna pay for it, they want to pay for iron exchange, just because you get longer life out of it. It's a smaller unit, and but again, it is expensive. So again, if you're a private property owner and you detect PFAS in your well, there actually is a program with the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. It's a New Jersey Spill Compensation Fund. And I'm not going to go into great detail with that, because we are going to set up a meeting with the DEP to really target that subject alone, because I can spend an hour talking about the whole program and the required sampling and the whole process of doing that. All I can say, it's not painful. It's not a painful process to get through that to go through the DEP with that things, and ultimately they'll pay 100% of it. Well, there's laboratories that you can call, and then they can do that. There's a number of I don't test it that often on a residential level, but there's a lot of laboratories out there. You call them up, they'll come out, they'll test it, and if you actually do get elevated, I would notify. As soon as you get an elevated concentration, contact the DEP. And again, we're going to have you know, give people guidance that if you want further guidance, you know, call the mayor. She actually helped a lot of people with doing that, and so it's not a complicated process to go through that. Once you get detection, you notify the DEP. DEP will ask you to do a confirmation sample, and you have to do a confirmation sample. But once you go through that, then you're in the system, and then you just go through the process. Excuse me? There's an initial fee for the sampling, but then the DEP will reimburse you for the second sampling. And then they'll reimburse you for the whole unit to go in.
Nancy, I just sent you the contact.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm a homeowner on Rollins Trail, so I started the process already. I had a company, there are several, the one I use is called ESML. I had to pay for the first test. it was about $300 to $400. They found elevated levels of PFAS. Now they're coming in tomorrow, no, Saturday, they're coming in to do the second test. They have to do a second test. I have to pay for that, but I'll get my money back. And after that, the state takes over. That's what I was told. Just so you know, you have to spend a few $100s at first to get the process started.
Basically, you're saying now with the low level of 4, everybody's gonna test positive.
Correct. Yeah, it's not everyone, but high probability that you're gonna get hits. And they have, there's at least 2 hotspots that the DEP's mentioned that because once they have a hit, they start scanning themselves and start to reach out to residents around that home that got a hit, and they'll offer to do sampling. So by all means, if you get a letter from the DEP, don't get intimidated. They want to sample your well. That's a good thing. Let them sample it, because ultimately it'll lead to them paying for a system being installed into your house.
I have another question.
Sure,
What
Mr.
do you think
Bangus.
about the drought? Can you make it rain?
Yeah, that I can't do, sorry. But
Probably want to make sure that's the case we do it, get it done before you think about selling the property.
yes,
If you're in the middle of a real estate sale, do it in the last second.
yeah, because it takes, once you get the it doesn't get, the samples don't it's not turn around in a week. It takes time to get those samples and go through the process. Like I said, it's painless, but it is time consuming. You have to get 3 quotes. It's just it's a process to get through, and you don't want to do it in the middle of a closing. Yes.
Anybody wants to ask, I feel like asking of the well for sale all the time, so I have several names, or I can just give them you guys of companies.
Yep, that's great. Thank you. So, go ahead. Yeah. Just the mayor just mentioned that, you just got to make sure whenever you call a laboratory that they need to be certified by the state. And that's just key, because you don't want to get a lab and then they won't accept it. So it does have to be certified.
Yeah.
Yep. Go ahead. Yeah, that's you can. There's a lot of companies that'll come out and do that. They'll do the exchange for you, and unfortunately, it's an ongoing cost. Yeah, no, but it's unfortunately it's an ongoing cost to the resident. The DP they'll install the initial unit, which is expensive to get the tanks and everything started. But ultimately, but I'm just pointing out to anyone who has a private well, they ultimately, it is an added respect. It's like having a water softener, it's just. With the town, we have a service. There's companies out there that do that. When we buy the carbon, they'll take out the old, and they actually exchange the bags, and they just take it away. And that's part of the service that they provide. And in fact, they, in order for us to reduce our costs for new carbon, actually they can recycle our own. And so there's a process there. So we're going to try to reduce the cost as much as we can to, with the exchanges. Yes. I know, but it seems like people are on a move. Yeah, it's almost over with that. But just regarding private wells, I just wanted to point out that the resources that are up there. This presentation is going to be posted on the website, so you can go on the website and get some additional links to the other sources with that. So I am going to jump into another subject that everyone's going to be notified. So why don't we talk about PFAS now? Get any questions out in PFAS, and then I'm going to talk about lead service lines. Yep, go ahead.
My question is, freeze in the winter, you have an awful lot of exposed plastic pipe. How do you keep that from freezing?
Yeah, it's heat traced, and it's we have insulation on it. So we've looked into that.
Is it insulation on the pipe?
Yeah, there's insulation on the pipe. It's heat tracing on the pipe, and it's external. It's all extra.
Yeah,
Well,
I live next to Durban Avenue, there's no external.
yeah, Durbin, the contractor's working on it. Yeah, that's, so far, all we have, we have the foundation in, obviously, the tanks are there. We're gonna be filling the carbon. After the carbon, then, because we can still start up. We want to get the well started first. So the well's gonna be started. Contractor's gonna come back and you'll see they're gonna wrap that right up. Yeah, we've already had three locations that already went through the winter and, we've, one of them froze because we didn't have the insulation on it. Go ahead.
I have a private well. I'm still in the infancy of all this process. I'm getting my home looked at to see what type of filtration system I currently have, what I may be, what might be available to me. I have made some quick phone calls and then, please, I'm gonna go to your next meeting, whenever that.
Yeah.
Great, or just a preview, but I was told that, I purchased this phone too. Is there some type of a time frame or cutoff that I'm not grandfathered into getting that paid for or federally covered system? And also if I do indeed have that system, am I not grandfathered to getting carbon replacements for the home?
So through this, can I?
Yeah, yes,
So
absolutely.
through the spill fund, once you apply and they put a carbon filtration system at the property location, that system is serviced for 5 years. Every 6 months, they come out and test the water. Every year, they come out and change the filters. But if there's a property change and you sell the home, the new owner of the home does not benefit from the first homeowner. So if you purchase a home where there is a carbon filtration system and you would not necessarily be covered under the original homeowner's carbon filtration system. That's just in the application, when you fill the application out as the homeowner that needs to get the spill fund to purchase the carbon filtration system. Once you sign that application, it is in there in black and white that this is null and void after you sell your home. And the new homeowner takes over the responsibility of testing the water themselves and changing the filters themselves. That's clearly on the New Jersey DEP spill funds website.
Yes.
I don't know, there you know this, but I had read or heard somewhere along the line that once you start the process, you only have a certain amount of time, like if you, I don't know, the first test or second test, or the second test.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
So you get your first test done, and once you test positive, you have to get a second test done. The state will not, the spill fund will not accept the tests being several months apart. They really are weeks apart. So you do your first, I'll tell you my specific incidents. My first test positive was January 3rd. My second test positive was January 18th. My carbon filtration system was installed February 15th. If you test positive and you're going through the New Jersey Spill Fund, they will pay for your water that you purchase from after you test positive the second time till your system is installed. So by April 11th, I had the check for my second test reimbursement and all of the water I purchased. It was from January 3rd till April 11th. My process was finished from start to finish. The only time that you have an issue is if you get your first done and you're waiting several months to test. They're not going to accept that first test. They have to be in a consecutive order.
Time limit
For
to get your first test before.
whatever you, if you call a company and they come out to test your home,
So if I decide in 6 months to do it, I'm still good?
as long as the New Jersey Spill Fund still has funding.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the program is probably so active because it's covering the whole state. So if you feel that you're going to wait 5-10 years, there may not be as much funding in that time frame. So, all I can say is strike while the iron's hot, while the money's available.
And I will just say, just to interject, the state did pay for my entire carbon filtration system. My system specifically was in upwards of $8,000 and they paid for everything. My neighbor's was in upwards of $10,000 and they paid everything for hers. So it is out there, it is available, which is again, is something that's dear to my heart because I've been through the system, I've lived it, it's my life. So, anyway.
No, you know, it's because the complexity of a bedrock aquifer, you know, it may have different concentrations based on which fracture you're pulling water from. But it's probably in the range of what we're seeing here. You know, I haven't seen any, I've heard anything of PFAS greater than 100, but I think that, you know, in the 50 range, it's not surprising if a homeowner has it in that concentration. Yes.
Using, activated carbon to treat the water, is chlorine put in after
Afterwards, yeah, we go through disinfection, and yeah, that's, you know, our basically, most of the wells have only had disinfection through chlorination, and that's all, but this is the next treatment. So we treat the carbon, and then we do it afterwards. Otherwise, the carbon would, you know, the chlorine would impact the carbon.
Is there a database at all of wells that have tested positive?
Yes. Oops, sorry.
Yeah. It's NJDEP's, it's not the Water Watch, it's, what's the watch that,
You can.
Data Miner. It's NJDEP Data Miner, but I tell you, it's really hard to go through that process because that database covers everything from underground storage tanks, other spills and everything. It's hard to find information on that. Yeah, it's very intense.
Since it takes a couple of months to get everything rolling, do you recommend any type of after product temporary system that a homeowner could put on their kitchen counter, for example, like filters or?
I can't tell you exactly how effective it's going to be, but certainly if you use just if you filter your water with a carbon filter, you know, bring the various, even the overmarket, you know, the simple, you know, full water filters would helpful. You know, absolutely. Yes.
Do they have a separate program for community wells? In other words, a housing development that has 20 or 30 homes with one well?
No, you can still go through the spill fund.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, you can still go through the spill fund. All right. I just, I'll start, you know, the next, you know, all I have is this. I'm just talking about, you know, I don't have a third subject, but I do want to touch on the lead service lines, because this is a regulation that came out that's you're going to start getting notices on this, and you've already gotten notices on already with lead services. So like I did with the PFAS, I'm going to talk about what is the DEP defined lead service lines, the regulatory overview, the service line identification and notification, and the borough reporting status. So the NJDEP, they did enact a new regulation, and actually it wasn't the DEP, it actually was a federal mandate. So it's again, this is another national issue that's being implemented, and the New Jersey DEP implemented in New Jersey. And so this New Jersey, they defined lead service lines of a line that contains lead, obviously a lead service line, but they also include galvanized lines, and they're concerned with the galvanized is typically when you know, the couplings are, a lot of times they'll use lead solder to seal them. So they have classified galvanized metal as also as lead service, which needs to be addressed. You know, I'm talking about that we have galvanized lines, we have lead service lines in the borough. The borough does test its water for lead and copper. You know, it's a regular program that we do. We test it regularly. We've never had exceedances of lead and copper. You know, the character, you know, our water is not corrosive where we have to do any corrosion inhibitors or anything. We haven't had any problem. But nevertheless, the state regulation is that they do want you to remove these galvanized lines and lead. So we're doing this as a mandate. It is precautionary. Certainly, we're not getting elevated levels, but you know, even if water sits in a pipe for a long period of time, months, you know, you could start to see some leaching happening. So it's conservative, but I think it certainly is a worthwhile task. You know, I criticize the DEP a lot, but this is something I think the requirement is beneficial to the residents. So when we're talking about, you know, the service lines, you know, we have we have basically a pipe in the road in our right of way. It's usually 6, 8 inches, you know, in some locations we have larger 12 and tons where we have some major connectors, but for the most part, it's 6 and 8 inches. We historically, and it really throughout New Jersey, is that the water company would just maintain the main, and then that water service that goes into the home, we would maintain that portion in the right of way, and then we have a curb stop, basically a valve that separates, you know, at the right of way limit. And then you have from that point, it goes into the house. This regulation addresses not only it's a mandate to have lead service lines replaced in the right of way, but it's also a mandate to remove the lead service lines on private property. It's a very, you know, unique law. I never saw this law where it actually gives the water purveyor the right to go on your property to remove this line. So they actually have a right under the law that to go on. They don't need an easement. The water purveyors don't need an easement to go on private property to remove this line. And it is the obligation of the water purveyor to replace that line. You know, typically, you know, we would see that they would impose a regulation and require the actual property owner to replace that. But this law actually requires the water purveyors to replace from the water main all the way to the house and to go on that private property and replace that line. The law also you know, has a provision that the water purveyor, you know, can charge the homeowner for that, to recoup those costs on private property. So very aggressive law to remove, you know, the galvanized and lead pipes. So the law was enacted in 2021, and it's the initial stages of the program was really to try to identify your inventory. Where do you have, you know, these lead service lines? Now, the municipality has decent records regarding what's in the right of way, because that's historically what we've always maintained. You know, we maintain from that main to that curb stop. So we have records of what we have. But historically, when homes are constructed, that's not something that the construction official would always have in his record regarding what was connected on the private property. So you probably did receive some questionnaires in the past asking for, you know, to report what your line is so that we can update our inventory and, you know, just have a record so we know which homes need to be impacted. So, so the first you know, like I said, the first process is to identify those homes that have lead or galvanized lines, and we're obligated, once we identify them, we need to schedule the replacement. The regulations don't say you have to do it immediately, but ultimately we do have to coordinate with those homeowners if it's on private property and have that done. The other requirement that we have to do is we have to get our inventory. We have to identify, we're obligated to identify all the lead and galvanized pipes in the municipality. And there's going to be another notice going out, just, you know, it's going to be mailed out in days, again, asking you to fill out this survey and to identify, you know, what type of line that you have on the service. And yep, I was just going to touch on that. So, you know, on that survey, we actually have, you know, information to actually identify, how do you identify lead? How do you identify copper? And we put, you know, steps in the it's on the website. We put it in the notices, but by all means, if you get this notice and you just don't know what you have, call the water department. We're happy to come out to your home and test it, look at it, and see what it is. You know, we're happy to do that.
John, a couple of years ago, we were required to fill out a questionnaire like that, and we had to go in, you know, into the basement where the water line came in. We had to sort of scratch the pipe and then send the picture in. Is
Sure.
that sufficient?
That is sufficient. Unfortunately, not many people did that. So that's why, you know, that's why we're kind of bringing it up now again. No, copper lines are fine. You do not have to replace copper lines. You know, we actually, we test for lead and copper because we're obligated to in case our water is corrosive and copper can still leach, but it's not the same health effects that you have with the lead and the urgency of the lead. It's just more aggressive, and that's why it's focusing on the lead. So on our, we took another step, and we actually have a survey that you can actually go right online on the township's website, access it, and you can just fill it out electronically. So you don't have to mail anything in. You have to just fill it out and let us know what you have. And again, this is going to be posted on the website, so you can get it off the presentation. But actually, if you go onto the website, hopefully it is relatively easy to find. I found it, so you should be okay.
Did anybody get that?
Yeah. So we have close to 2,400 services, and so far this is, so far this is all we got. These are all our responses. We had it's pitiful, regarding the responses that we've gotten, and we really, the borough is obligated to get this inventory done.
These are all, they're not in compliance.
Correct. These are the few. Now we had inventory. I didn't report the regarding who responded and who had copper and stuff. But we know there's a lot more galvanized, not necessarily that, but we know for sure that there's a lot of galvanized lines. Frankly, just it may have been 10 years ago, time flies, that we replaced all the water mains in the Wildwood Shores. And we know that we have copper on our side in the right of way, but we came across a lot of galvanized services. So we know there's a lot more galvanized pipe out there. And the same with Elbow Point. We know that in the older homes that there's a lot of galvanized pipe in there. Unfortunately, 10 years ago when we installed that, we didn't know these regulations were coming out. And so, we didn't document then as we were ripping up and connecting into the existing services. But we do have to go with this inventory. We're obligated to complete this inventory. And ultimately the town's either going to have to knock on every single door and come into the house, or we have to start. And if we can't get in, we actually have to start digging up in the front lawn and expose that curb box and figure out what it is. So we're trying to avoid that extreme to do that. So, but again, we're obligated to do that. This is probably the most important slide that I'm going to have tonight, is because we applied for federal grant funding to fund replacement of lines, not only in the right of way but also on private property. So we've applied for that grant funding. That funding is actually made it to the bill that's going into federal appropriations for 2025. So there's very good chance it's going to be it's a good chance. I've never seen I've done this with other municipalities. If you get to this point, it's almost guaranteed we're going to get the money. I've never seen things be pulled out of that bill. So we're hoping that we're going to secure $1 million to replace this. The council hasn't officially, made this determination, but the discussion is that it's going to be a first come, first served basis. So if you get your inventory report to us and you have a galvanized line, you're going to be on that list and you're going to get it replaced at no cost. And the $1 million is going to last. We're going to get at least, I would say, 50 to 100 connections that we're going to get with that $1 million. Hopefully we don't get into too much rock or other conditions. Hopefully where the existing water line is, hopefully they removed rock, but may not be the case. But but ultimately, we are going to do that on a first come, first served basis. So those people that came to us first are where we're going to apply that grant funding. We haven't worked out all the details regarding implementation of how we're going to do that. We will see if ultimately we have a lot more services, we'll try and make the money last a little longer. And what we may do is just offer to replace the line and general general restoration, but if you have a complicated property where, you know, we're gonna have to go through a lot of landscaping or have to do something, we may just defer that cost to you to do that and just, you know, defer some of the costs for you to replace that line. But very important, you know, I had the slide, there's only a few homes on there, but we know there's a lot more out there. So, you know, really, it really needs you to, you know, fill out those surveys and just recognize that if you don't respond to that survey, we are ultimately going to find out what that pipe is. If you have a galvanized pipe, we have to, you know, we're obligated. You're not obligated to replace the line. We are obligated. So if we get into, and all this work has to be done by 2031. So that's our deadline. We have to, you know, report to the state that we've replaced all the service lines by 2031. That comes very quickly. It's right around the corner, frankly. And so those people that don't take advantage of the grant funding that we have, we're ultimately going to come in and replace that line regardless. And if we run out of grant funding, then the council's likely going to charge that, whatever that cost is for us to do it, you know, we're going to, you know, surcharge you for that cost. So please, like I said, this is the most important slide that I can present tonight, is that if you have galvanized or a lead line, let us know as soon as possible so you get on our list to be available for grant funding. That's only for the public wells. Correct.
Is,
Good.
any of the mains that we have now still currently galvanized or lead?
We have two locations that are very short sections. We replaced them over the years, and so those are targeted to be replaced also.
You know where those are?
I think one was on Ithanel. There's a short section, and another one, the other section's in Elba. I forget what road it is. It's a short section. Yeah, so that those two, but those are targeted. We're gonna target to replace them next year. Yep. Yeah, we've had a lot more, but we replaced them. You know, there's a lot in Wildwood Shores, and we've replaced a lot of galvanized lines. You know, the history of our water system, it was just, you know, you know, Hopatcong really was just a resort community, and these were just all small private water systems, and ultimately they were abandoned. The borough took them over, and you know, it's been a challenge for the borough just to get these up to code, replacing mains, replacing tanks, and doing different things. But you know, we're in a you know, we get into a good place, and all of a sudden DEP throws another regulation at us, so we struggle sometimes. But you know, the infrastructure is getting, you know, to be really reinforced. Yep.
Private wells, are not applicable in this way.
Yeah, this is the you know, there may be a regulation coming in the future. So, you know, just like they usually address the public water, then the you know, public water first, usually wells come second. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's not down the road. Yes.
As far as identifying your line, if it comes through your foundation as brass or copper, chances are it's brass or copper, correct?
Correct. You know, there is always that possibility that somewhere, you know, that the main was, your service was changed out. You know, only a portion of it was repaired and not the entire one was repaired. So, you know, that is a challenge for us. You know, we're gonna, you know, it's, you know, we're not going to dig up everyone's front lawn. You know, I think we're going to make the reasonable effort by, you know, those that, you know, a lot of the, yeah, we usually, and we're also, as we're replacing you know, going forward, we're, you know, a lot of times we have to replace the service box. So if you have to replace a service box and you report that you have a copper and then we find galvanized, we're gonna have to address that in the future. So, you know, the 2031 date is really the effort for us to do our due diligence, what's reasonable to identify this inventory, correct those. But there could be situations where someone has a small piece of galvanized that no one knows about and it's discovered in the future. All right, again, I just had the presentation talking about the grant funding. I think I already, talked about that. And again, depending on, just because we have our suspicions regarding how much, what we have out there, but, we may have to limit the amount of restoration we do on individual properties, just to apply, at least get the money applied to replacing that service line. So, so that's again, just, questions. I think we kind of jumped into questions there. Is that kind of good that everyone had questions during the presentation? It worked out well.
The grant you guys got, you said that you only going to go like any connections for.
No. We may get, it really, again, we're going to address it on a first come, first served basis. So if someone comes with a complicated case and they're on the first, the first 10 that we have, we're going to address those first. I think it's only fair for those people that are responsive to our request for the inventory, the money goes to them first. Yeah, it could vary, it does vary significantly. It could be, I've seen connections go in for a few $1,000s where I've seen other connections go in for $10,000. So it is varies from house to house.
Plan where that is like over a certain section and just get in there and just replace all those lines going,
Yeah, it recognized that we have to do everyone. So it's just a matter of, we didn't want, and that's something for the council to decide on. I'm just saying that's, I've advised the council regarding what other municipalities have done where they have received grant funding, and most municipalities are doing that is doing that policy, is that the people that respond, those are ones that go first. It seems like it's a very fair way of doing it. So people that procrastinate, they may not get the funding. People that respond to our request right away are on the top of the list. Yeah. It is very poor. It is very poor. And like I said, it is an obligation on the water purveyor, on the Hopatcong Water Department. And this is statewide, we have, every water system in New Jersey has to do this. And I would say that a lot of municipalities are, we're not far behind on this, but in relation to other people, but we are in fact a little behind in what we should be doing a little bit more. The DEP's expectation, they gave you a 10-year period. They were hoping that you would replace 10% over that 10-year period. And here we are 4 or 5 years into the system and we haven't replaced one. So, our hopes is that we get a nice turnout for this inventory, that next round coming around, we get, we're going to have the grant funding. So we hope to have at least start replacing services, possibly as early as late 2025. Because we do have to go through the grant. Even when you get the grant, there's processes you have to go through in order for us to draw the money. Yes.
Is that grant funding, the $1 million to be spent first come, first served, was that a one-time hit, or we apply for grants 2025, 2026,
You
have 10 years to do it?
Well, we have 10 years to do it, but everyone for the federal funding, every single state is asking for it. Every single water company is doing that. I can't guarantee that we're going to have a second shot at the apple. Yeah, we may not. We may not.
I will say though, applying for this grant that we are possibly going to receive, I believe it's 1.4 or 1.6 million. But we were one of 15 projects chosen out of 300 and something projects to be funded. So the need was seen that we do need to use it. So
Yeah, I know there's other municipalities that applied for this funding and they can get into the bill. So, they can apply, you can apply every year for earmarks, and that's what this is. And so, it's good that we got onto the bill and then we're moving forward. So.
And we will continue any funding
Yeah.
that we can apply for this, of course we will.
Yes.
Were in all wells test positive for PFAS, private or municipal?
I can't talk for private because I don't know, we're not privy to that, but all the municipal wells had detections of PFAS. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Certainly you're encouraged to test it because you're better to know sooner than later on a private well.
I can tell you on the private well side of it, just having personal one-on-one conversations about my personal situation, 2023 and 2024, I've helped over 300 people with their spill fund paperwork, and they've all tested positive, all different areas all over town.
Maria, are we gonna touch the borough building that had a private well?
I don't know, I don't do the water testing, but I'm sure John.
Yeah, we have to check all the municipal buildings. Every customer on the system has to be checked.
PFAS. Firehouse.
You know what? That's a good question that right now, I don't think we're obligated to test that. And so it's a good point that we should test it. Yeah, very good point. Yes.
John, we live in, Upper Point, I noticed I monitor our water, quality. And there seems to be a higher level of dissolved solids in there, does the carbon filter bring that down?
Yeah, it's not designed to bring it down. I would have to look at that. I'm not sure. You know, we have high dissolved solids to begin with in our water. It's high. You know, that's nature of quality of our water. Yes,
There on the Hookup Borough website,
yes, it is.
It's under, yeah, when you're on the borough, website, click community. And then you'll see the water links pop up from there. Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah, for the PFAS testing, you're doing that at the individual well, and that's being reported to the agencies.
yes.
Is there any requirement to test at home?
No, that the water department is not obligated to test the homes. The home private, you fall under different regulations for homeowners. If you sell the property, then you have to test it, but you're not obligated to test it on your own. It's a voluntary for you to test it on your own.
Let me just correct that. Once you hit the community link on the borough website, there's a link for public notices, and then once you hit public notices, you'll see the water survey there.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe we move it to the front just because with pop it up because with these new notices going out, hopefully people respond. Yeah, make it simple. Any questions on from the, oh, they can't ask questions, not interactive, okay. All right, any other questions? You know, we're certainly, if you have other questions, reach out to us. You know, we certainly want to answer questions, anything you have. If we can help you with anything else, we welcome. Again, if you're not sure what pipe you have coming into the house, by all means, call up the water department. We're happy to come out to help assist.
Thank you.